The truth about James O'Keefe.
Mr. Reagan.
This is not a video that I wanted to do, but I happen to know quite a few people over at Project Veritas, and as soon as this story broke, James O'Keefe fired from Project Veritas. I thought, I gotta text some of these people. I gotta find out what's really going on. So I texted quite a few people. I had quite a few very long phone calls, and there's a lot more to the story than we're being told. First of all, let's dispel a couple of rumors. James O'Keefe was not fired. James O'Keefe has not resigned. There has been no severance. According to my source, he was on administrative leave. He has now been indefinitely suspended, and there are reasons for this.
James O'Keefe indefinitely suspended as CEO without compensation. I don't know why this is happening.
Now, Project Veritas released a statement listing some of those reasons, but I'm going to go into them in a little bit more depth here. But it essentially boils down to this. The board of directors over at Project Veritas, they believe that James O'Keefe has committed crimes, or at least they suspect that he may have done so. Now, this may not have been intentional, and I'll get to that a little bit later as well. But that is really what this boils down to. Now, a lot of people have been speculating that maybe this is just a personality clash. Like, there's some people at Project Veritas that don't like James O'Keefe, and that's why he's being ousted. I asked several people about that. Everybody basically said, yeah, I mean, the problem with this whole situation is that there are a lot of people who really do hate James O'Keefe. And this is because James O'Keefe is a difficult guy. And I've known this for quite some time. I don't know James O'Keefe personally. We may have met at CPAC at one point. I don't actually remember meeting him, so I'm not 100% sure. But I know a lot of people who do know James O'Keefe. And basically everyone I've ever talked to about him says the same thing. James O'Keefe is a dick. I mean, people do not like him. That said, I don't dislike him, actually. And I think that everyone recognizes the value of James O'Keefe and the value that he has had for the conservative movement, for the country. He's exposed so much corruption, so much leftist nonsense. I mean, the stuff that we've gotten from Project Veritas has been critical to the health of our republic. James O'Keefe is a legend. Honestly, he has been a blessing to this country. So how rude he is, or how cold he can be, or, vicious with some people or whatever.
I haven't always been the most compassionate leader, and that is admittedly a fault of mine, something I need to work on.
Yeah, that's a problem, and that will be a problem for him in his life. But because I don't know James O'Keefe personally, I cannot dislike him for those reasons. Now, Project Veritas has not been absolutely clear about why James O'Keefe has been put on this suspension. And so a lot of people have been speculating that, maybe it's just because of this personality clash, and the other reasons that were listed, that's just a smokescreen. Those are just excuses. No, the people that I talked to told me very explicitly, personality stuff, the grievances, the hostile work environment, all that kind of stuff, none of it had anything to do with this suspension. The reason that James O'Keefe was suspended was for misappropriation of funds. That's what they think that he's done. One of the people that I talked to that work at Project Veritas said to me that when James O'Keefe was put on his administrative leave and there were rumors of this misappropriation of funds and stuff like that, they actually told me they didn't think that it was such a big deal. And the reason they thought that is because they thought, if there is some kind of suspicion of this and it has to be worked out of the company, this seems to be the appropriate action that needs to be taken. So they thought that the board was acting appropriately. And this person does not hate James O'Keefe, by the way. So it kind of got blown out of proportion as far as they're concerned. They seem to think that maybe the clashing of the personalities, the egos that got involved, kind of blew this up into something that it didn't need to be. But currently, we've got this situation in which everybody seems to be just siding with James O'Keefe. They just seem to believe what James O'Keefe has said, but we don't have the Project Veritas side. And I've gone in and I've gotten that. And so we have that here. Now, James O'Keefe presented a very eloquent, well-spoken, well-presented statement.
What makes us great is that we do this work because we actually believe in it, right? We actually believe in this. It shocks people that we do, and we have a passion for it, and we have principle. Like, I know, we don't sell out. I think that's fair. I remember back in the beginning, 13 years ago, when I had no money, I would have to use bubble gum, duct tape, I think you were around during that time. I keep looking at you because I've known you since Andrew Breitbart. And my grandmother's chinchilla, I literally had to place a Project Veritas sticker on a piece of cardboard that I ripped off from my dad's cardboard and stick it to a microphone at Radio Shack because I had no money to buy a flag mic. And I'm going to take you through this. I'm going to take you through what happened. On Thursday, February 2nd, that's a few days after the Pfizer story, I was informed by an officer of Project Veritas on the phone while en route to the airport that he would resign unless I stepped down as CEO. We've been having a conflict of visions, him and I, over fundraising. I tried to deal with it privately, but I was unsuccessful, and the disagreement boiled over publicly in a staff meeting. The next day, this individual refused to resign, so I fired him. Later that same day, that's Thursday, February 2nd, a few days after the 50 million viewed Pfizer videos, I was informed by a different officer of Project Veritas that he would go to the board in a few hours from that moment and have an emergency vote to restructure this company. Receiving an agenda in my email while I was sitting on an airplane tarmac with the doors closing, the meeting was scheduled for the moment that my plane landed in Nashville. It became clear to me in that moment I would be removed from my position at Project Veritas by the time I landed at my destination. I bet you didn't know that. Both my parents are as genuine and down to earth as a son could ever have. It's true you never really know someone until you go through hell with them. You see, back in the carriage house 13 years ago, the feds would come to my home to make sure that I was inside my house, administering random drug tests and rifling through my expenses to make sure I wasn't lying about the strawberry ice cream I bought at 7-Eleven. My father went through this hell with me and stood up to those bullies on the front lawn and told them to stop harassing our family. And at that point, that's all I had.
He presents himself as perfectly innocent of having done anything wrong, and he is just basically the victim of something, and he's not really sure what, and he presents a few different theories as to what's going on. You know, he's kind of suggesting like that this is some kind of nefarious stuff. Let's look through the accusations specifically, like what exactly Project Veritas is claiming that James O'Keefe has done here. So they've given a few examples. They say that he spent $14,000 on a charter flight to meet somebody to fix his boat under the guise of meeting with a donor. He lost $60,000 putting together dance events such as Project Veritas Experience. He spent over $150,000 in black cars over the last 18 months. I asked about that. That's apparently Uber Black. It's just a sort of like a more expensive Uber, right? He spent thousands of dollars on DJ and other equipment for personal use and hundreds of other acts of personal inurement. And this is the real problem. Like this is where they're concerned. I think a lot of us hear that and they think, okay, well, so what? It's his business. He created it. He can use the money any way he sees fit. But actually, no, that's not a company. It didn't make money selling a product or a service. Project Veritas is a nonprofit organization. It runs from donations from people. People don't donate money to Project Veritas in order for James O'Keefe to go do his own personal business. They donate money so that Project Veritas can go about the business of exposing corruption, exposing the left. So for James O'Keefe to use that money for his own stuff, that actually would be a crime. And so that's got to be kind of dealt with, looked through, figured out, you know, how much money James O'Keefe might owe Project Veritas and then try to compensate them or something like that. That makes sense. If it's true that James O'Keefe did misappropriate funds. And this is the claim. Now, one of the people I talked to over there, they used this expression exactly. They said, he effed Project Veritas over. And that's the problem. That's really the problem that the board sees at the moment. They are afraid that the FBI is going to come in and they're going to investigate them. And if what James O'Keefe has done is in fact wrong, maybe Project Veritas could get shut down. They're trying to protect Project Veritas. And they're trying to protect James. That what I was told was, look, if they can reconcile this, if they can fix it so that Project Veritas is compensated for any perhaps personal expenses that James O'Keefe took money for, then there wouldn't be a problem, right? So they just got to work together here. And I will say on a personal note, just from my life experience, I wouldn't expect that James O'Keefe, if he has done this, if he is guilty of this, I don't think he intended to F over Project Veritas. My thought is that, look, this is his organization. It's his baby. He often does have to use money for business purposes but things that he'll go do personal things on that business trip, right? So like, let's say I want to go to Chicago, I might spend business funds to do it because it's a business trip, but then I have a friend in Chicago, maybe I go meet up with her and we have dinner or something like that. That's a private thing, but on a business trip. So sometimes this stuff gets kind of muddy. And so you gotta be a little careful, right? Maybe he wasn't so careful. Maybe he just got complacent. I think that's what happens. It becomes a slippery slope, right? Instead of spending money on things that are mostly business with a little bit of personal stuff, maybe they become mostly personal stuff with a little bit of business. Maybe occasionally you spend company money on something that's not business related at all. It's just personal, and that's it. One of the most alarming expenditures that I was made aware of, it's not something that's listed here, apparently James O'Keefe had a girlfriend in Los Angeles. And what he was doing, and I verified this with several sources, I talked to several people about it, James O'Keefe was going to see his girlfriend and he was charging Project Veritas for these trips, or he was using company money to go on these trips, and he was pretending that he was doing journalism or he was doing fundraising or something like this, but he was doing nothing of the sort. He was just going to go see this girlfriend of his. There was another instance in which apparently he had booked a venue in order to get married. He was going to marry this girl. They called off the wedding, but he had still placed a deposit down on this location. And so instead of getting married, he just shifted it to the company party so that he wouldn't lose his deposit. Now, in that particular situation, I don't actually think that's a big deal, right? So some of this stuff, they may be wrong. Maybe the board is wrong in some cases, and in fact, some of the expenditures were totally legitimate. In other cases, maybe they weren't, but it would make sense that they would want to put him on administrative leave or suspend him until they had time to go through this, to go through the accounting, figure it out, balance the books, and then maybe they can figure out how to move forward with James O'Keefe. But then things get a little bit stickier, because one person that I've spoken with told me that there was a thought, there was a rumor, there was an idea out there that maybe James O'Keefe's suspension was retribution for his firing of the CFO. He's recently fired the CFO. Chief Financial Officer. So I asked about that. I asked some of the other people at the office about that, and what they told me was, no. The reason that James O'Keefe fired the CFO, this is what people understand over there, is that James O'Keefe was confronted about these misappropriations of funds, and he basically tried to influence the CFO to cover it up, to help him cover up the crimes, if they are crimes. And the CFO said no, he would not do that. He believed that there was misappropriation of funds and that it had to be dealt with. So this is the claim of the board. This is the claim of the people at Project Veritas, from what I understand from my sources. James O'Keefe did not want to sort out this problem. He did not want to reconcile any kind of discrepancies. He didn't want to balance the books. He just wanted to cover it up. The people at Project Veritas have told me that their plan was just to fix the problem internally, save Project Veritas, save James O'Keefe. And like I said before, this is where things get a little ugly, because I'm not sure that everybody at Project Veritas does want to save James O'Keefe. And so it makes sense to me that some people would wonder, like, are they really going after him because of some misappropriation of funds, or do they really just hate him and they want him out? And this is some kind of an excuse. Maybe that's true for some of those people, but I do believe that some of the people there really are convinced that there was this misappropriation of funds, that there were crimes that were committed. I mean, I can assure you, I am totally convinced that these people, at least the people that I talk to, do genuinely believe that James O'Keefe misappropriated funds, and that needs to be dealt with, or that needed to be dealt with, and that's why this thing all came about. But I can also tell you that, yeah, a lot of people at Project Veritas really hate James O'Keefe. And it's just because he's not the most likable guy, from what I understand. Again, I don't know him personally, but that's what everybody says. And it's a bit of a shame because, as I said before, we all respect the work that he's done. I mean, look at the last thing that he did, this amazing exposing of Pfizer. And when that interview was done, James O'Keefe walked into that restaurant, and he already had a viral video. And he walks in, he confronts the guy, and the guy flips out. And now he's got a second viral video. Now, how many people could have really done that? Not a lot, right? Not a lot of guys. Sometimes being an aggressive guy, being a little bit maybe of a narcissist, sometimes it actually benefits you. Sometimes that's the only kind of guy that can get the job done. So James O'Keefe, he goes in, he confronts the guy flips out. He's got this amazing secondary viral video. And it's like, that's so much value in my mind to Project Veritas. Why would you want to get rid of that guy? Even though he's a bit rude in the office, why get rid of him? Well, it's not just that he's rude at the office, guys. I didn't know this until I called these friends of mine, these people that I know that work at Project Veritas. James O'Keefe makes working at Project Veritas hell for a lot of people. I mean, it is a very toxic environment. There are 65 people who work at the company right now. In the last 5 or 6 years, apparently 139 people have either quit or been fired. The average tenure of an employee at Project Veritas is 16 months. And you got to understand, some of those people are like lifers. They've been there forever. So it's less than that, actually, for the people who are turning over. Another thing that somebody told me was that James O'Keefe, he likes to be the center of attention. He likes to be in the spotlight. He likes to be the one that people see. He likes to be the face of Project Veritas. So occasionally you'll have somebody else at the company who will get a little bit of notoriety, who will become a little bit of a public figure. And what does he do? He benches them or he fires them. And I've heard he's fired a lot of very good people because he doesn't want anybody usurping his authority. He's the main guy there and nobody's going to look good next to him. It's just going to be him and that's it. That's what people have told me. Now, look, I'm not trying to make James O'Keefe look bad. I have nothing against him personally, and I massively respect what he's done. But when you have this kind of personality, you're going to make enemies. And when something like this happens, people may not be lining up to help you. In his video in which he expressed how he's being removed from his position at Project Veritas, he suggests that maybe this has to do with Pfizer, right? This was his last big story. Maybe Pfizer's a very important company. Maybe Pfizer came in, they talked to the board, and they told them, you got to remove James O'Keefe. I have been told explicitly this is absolutely false. There's no truth to this. Pfizer had nothing to do with it. These conspiracy theories are completely false. This is an internal thing. And as I said, at least 2 of the employees said they like James and that they didn't think that it was, well, at least one guy, he said he didn't think it was such a bad thing that he had been suspended for a little while because it seemed like the correct course of action if they really believed that James had misappropriated some of the funds. And so they just thought it was an internal thing. They didn't understand why it had to be made public and had to make Project Veritas look bad. Now, I don't know whose fault that was. There was leaks coming out of Project Veritas for a while now. And then, James O'Keefe comes out with this video and it just blows up. And now everybody hates Project Veritas. They're posting these videos of like subscribers to the Project Veritas Twitter account, just falling. And I'm just thinking, like, why do that? Why do it? Why turn your back on Project Veritas after all the good they've done? Yes, James O'Keefe is Project Veritas, but Project Veritas is also a bunch of other people, 65 people at that company. There's no reason to turn your back on all of them. They're good people, guys. Yeah, everybody loves James O'Keefe, but like maybe he's wrong here. And there's a bit of an issue because he's been attacked before unjustly several times. And so we've gotten to, I think, a habit of defending James O'Keefe and standing up beside him and saying, I'm going to defend this guy, right? But this is not the case of like the left going after him or, some other kind of like deep state enemy. This is his own people, like the people that he works with every day saying, there might be a problem here. So maybe let's take a step back and not just unsubscribe from Project Veritas. There can still be Project Veritas, and we can still support James O'Keefe at the same time. At the end of the day, one of the people I talked to said, who's benefiting the most from this is James O'Keefe. Project Veritas isn't benefiting from it. Like, nobody's really enjoying this problem, this suspension, this video that James O'Keefe has put out, but he's kind of turned it to his advantage, right? Because he's got so many supporters. But here's the kind of good thing about that, I think. If James O'Keefe does decide to step away from Project Veritas, or if they do fire him, or however it happens, James O'Keefe is severed from Project Veritas, James O'Keefe can just do it again. And he doesn't have to start from the beginning. Because the truth is that he can find investors to start up a new Project Veritas. Obviously, it wouldn't be called that, it'd be called something else, but he can start a new company, a new nonprofit, whatever it is. He can get investors, or he could do crowdfunding. if he put up a crowdfunding site, I know that I would support it. I would give him money to do that because I would love to see a second Project Veritas. And I do mean second Project Veritas because you can have two Project Veritases at the same time. You can have Project Veritas and you can have James O'Keefe's new project at the same time. They can both be investigating the left. They can both be exposing corruption. They're not going to compete against each other. They're not going to kill each other. They can both get funding and they can both be successful. And I don't see why that can't happen. So I think James O'Keefe is going to be just fine. One of the people I talked to did say something that was a little bit disconcerting. They said, at the end of all of this, I genuinely think that James O'Keefe is going to prison. That struck me. But the reality is, if some crime has been committed, that is a possibility. I pray that that doesn't happen for James O'Keefe's sake, for the sake of America, because I think James O'Keefe is a hero. You know, I think that he is a good guy and he's done a lot of good. Is he a little bit unpleasant to work with for some people? Yeah. And I actually think that's a severe understatement. I think, you know, for his own sake, maybe he should reassess how he is, how he talks to people, because when you create that many enemies at your office, you know, when you get into a situation like this, maybe you don't have as many friends as you think that you have. And that's a very sad situation. But anyway, I would still like to see James O'Keefe survive this and thrive. And I would also like to see Project Veritas survive this and thrive. So come on, guys, stop unsubscribing from the Project Veritas Twitter account. Support James, support Project Veritas. You can support them both. And let's kind of see how this plays out, right? At the end of it, you might not think that the other folks at Project Veritas are all that bad. Now, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Are you still a big fan of James O'Keefe? Do you support Project Veritas? Do you think what they did was sensible? Or are you just James O'Keefe or die? Let me know in the comments what you guys think. I will read them because I want to know. I want to know what you guys think. So that's it for me. And remember, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant. It's just they know so much. That is not so. Good night.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation. Well, isn't this the liberal philosophy? The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government. Get off my back. Get out of my pocket. And let me have more control of my own destiny.